What's up, world? We're gonna had a gentleman contact me today, and he wanted to do a hangar door. There's a couple options as far as hangar doors. There's Schweiss Bi-Folds. There's a higher power door, and like a sliding door like Norco. I really don't do too many Norco doors because they require that you buy the door specs before they'll give the information. They require you buy the door before they'll give you the specs to price the door. So this is going to be an example on a higher power door. It doesn't have the requirements that a Schweiss door would have. A Schweiss door would be fully dependent on, it would be basically hanging off the building, so you have to provide some stub columns for it. What I'm doing here real quick is I'm throwing a full load rigid frame in the end wall. Typically we have like C-channel end walls. They're called post and beam end walls. It's not necessarily an I-beam. The only time that would be required is if you plan on expanding on the building. If you want to leave that whole end wall open, you would need a rigid frame end wall. Or if you're going to use a hangar door, you have to have a rigid frame on that end wall. So back to the door, the higher power door, and we're going to stop with the ums, man. I went to a public speaking course. I don't know why I'll be dropping all these ums. So we're going to nix that right now. The higher power door doesn't require the stub columns. It claims to be a self-supporting door. So basically the jams that they're providing and however you're anchoring it to the ground is going to support the door when it opens and closes. So the requirements on the building aren't as stringent as you would have to have with a Schweiss Bi-Fold door. What we're doing here is we're going to add some rod bracing. You've seen that probably in my previous video if you watched it. If not, I'd go check it out. You probably learn some stuff. We're using rod bracing in that first bay because of the hangar door opening. You would also do that if we would be providing like a mezzanine where it's going to be welded. It would be bolted to the columns that we're providing, and then you'd finish out the mezzanine with either concrete or a wood decking. Another thing with this building is it's single slope. So on the previous video I ran a Gable building. As you can see here, this is a single slope building, and he asked me, well, what's more expensive? He really wanted, after doing some digging, he really wanted a single slope building, but he was a little reluctant to disclose that to me. He asked me what's more expensive, and I told him, based on my experience, the single slope is going to be more expensive simply because when you have a Gable building, both of those rafters are spreading that load across half of the distance. Whereas with a single slope building, you've got both of those rafters basically sit in the middle. They're going to want to lag, so the beams are going to have to be bigger, and at the end of the day, you're paying for the weight of the building. So what we're doing here is the building width is 70 feet. We're putting a 60 foot wide by 18 foot high opening in there for the higher power door. When you do the openings for the hangar doors, your bay spacing would be 5 foot across the width of that opening. So on a 60 foot, that's 12 5-foot bays, which would have 12 columns above it to support the bifold door if we were doing it. But the big thing here is we don't have to have those stub columns to support the door, but we have to support the header on that opening because the jams aren't running all the way to the ground. So we're going to have to kick those back to the purlins or the rigid frame. This one's going to Texas. So we also, you have to, on a typical building, if you want to, say you have a 14-foot eave, you want to put a 12-foot opening in there, that's fine. You have to have 2 feet above that opening to allow room for the door hardware. With a hangar door, you have to make sure that the opening isn't going to encroach on the rigid frames. Like a lot of times people will be like, yeah, let me get a 60 wide building and I want a 60 wide opening. Well, how big is your, how big is it? What's your wingspan? 58 feet. Where they're not taking into consideration the main supports on that end that are supporting the building. So in this case, they're probably going to be like 2 feet wide, whereas we have a 5-foot bay on either side of that door opening. So we'll have room for the frame and then the door opening. We got that minimized right now. Here we go. Just keep in mind, I'm your guy. I'll walk you through the whole process. Gotta support my family and that Charizard back there. So what we're doing here is just throwing a walk door opening in there. Obviously you don't have to lift the big old door if you're just trying to get into the hangar to check your logs, or you're that guy that repossesses airplanes. I can't remember his name, but it's a cool show. So again, those openings are field located. We're just providing the jams, the header, the trim, and you put it where you want it. What I'm doing here is, we typically do a screw down roof, but after doing some discussing with this gentleman and the size of the building, I suggested that he looked at the standing seam roof, which instead of being screwed down, it's going to be mechanically seamed together, such as, like, I like to explain it like when you run out of toothpaste and you try to roll. I can't be the only guy that does this. You try to roll the bottom of the toothpaste up to squeeze the last little bit out. That's basically what the mechanical seamer does to the panels, so you don't have to worry about whoever's installing your building if he misses the purlin when he's installing, when he's using the fasteners, trying to track down a leak in a 70 by 100 building. You do a standing seam roof, it's mechanically sealed, the water's not getting in. So that's exactly, we're doing a standing seam roof on this. I guess I should have added that to the, I'm going to go back and add that to the title to the standing seam roof. Most of the buildings that we ship are PBR panel, so it's just a panel lapped over another panel with some mastic in between it, and then the fastener screwing through those two panels, the mastic, into the purlin. On this one, we're doing a standing seam roof, which is going to have some clips on the purlins that the panels would line up to, and then the mechanical seamer will run up the roof panel and back down to seam it together. So we're going to go ahead and price this out so we could get my guy a solid price on this hangar for Texas. I've got a couple hangars in Texas. Actually, was responsible for one in Area 51, believe it or not. I could dig through my drawings to find that. When I had a team, because your boy had a team at one point and had a mastermind. It was some good times. So basically this is the most boring part of the whole process, is letting the computer go through it. Single slope buildings, they're cool. We could do those as far as like for, like agricultural buildings. Some guys just want it because how their land's laid out, they're putting it in the corner of a property where they're not going to have access from one side of it, so it would just be easier to let the water or snow drip down the back side of the building, onto the property line or whatever. They are a majority of the times a little bit more expensive. On this one it's obviously going to be more expensive than a 30 by 100 or a 40 by 100 because the beams aren't spanning they're spanning longer than it would be on a smaller building. So like you get into a 30 wide or 40 wide, it's really not going to be too much of a big deal as far as the price because of the span. Now if we went to 100 wide clear span versus single slope, I'm going to tell you the clear span is definitely going to be a lot cheaper because you're spanning 100 feet. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing I want you to take away from this is you're paying for the weight of the building. All the design jazz and everything is cool, but that's built into the program, and at the end of the day, however much that building weighs is what's going to determine your price. There's tiers to it too, so you hit a certain weight level, your price per pound may drop down a little bit more than what it would be if the weight was a little less. So this drawing here is showing you the rigid frame, and those would be the stub columns there that, in this case, they're just kickbacks to support that header for that door opening. But if it were a Schweiss Bi-Fold door, which would require us to provide stub columns to support the door off of, those would be your stub columns. In this case, they're just there to support that header above the opening because it's spanning 60 feet and there's nothing below that 60 feet to support it, so it's going to have to be supported from the top. You know, most of the times that channel is going to run all the way down to the, you know, base. You know, in this drawing you'll see those rafters up there, how they're a lot larger than the previous video with the gable, because it's just a single slope. But there are two columns. They're going to be bolted together in the middle. You can see up at the top left, it's a 26 gauge super seam, which is a standing seam panel. Now that specific drawing that I showed you there, that's the end wall column. That would be the first column where that door opening is going to be, and then the columns behind it would be the RF DWG2, which we should pull up here shortly. Again, I voiced these over. I recorded myself running this building earlier just to be able to come back and voice over it. So looks like we're going to bring that drawing up here in a little bit. Just not sure which drawing I'm going to pull up. Give me one moment, guys. I appreciate you hanging with me. Oh, we're saving the 3D, so we've got a 3D here. That's basically the building that we just ran. I think my computer's lagging, to be honest with you. Alright, so I'm sorry about that. What we've got here is the anchor bolt layout, just basically showing you. We can get into another video with the anchor bolt layout and how the templates are shown when you receive your permit drawings, so you could have those anchor bolts embedded into the concrete, so, you know, so that when the building shows up you could tilt it up, you know, put it on top of those anchor bolts and bolt it down. I ran 5 bays at 20 feet. I think most companies would probably do like a 4 at 25. The reason I do the 20-foot bays is because those it's all about the weight, right? So those columns aren't going to be as big as if you run them at 25 feet. So this is the door that I was referring to. It's a higher power door. I'm going to put the link for the video so you see how the door opens and closes, and it's self-supported. And if you want to reach out to them to get a door and reach out to me to price you the building so we can get you a hanger, let's make it happen. There's my number. There's the link for the YouTube video for the higher power door. Make sure you subscribe and like, because I'm going to keep doing this. I'll educate you. You give me the data. I'll enter it into the system. We'll design you a building, and we're going to build across America, across the world. Again, Elon Musk, the moon, Mars, will make it happen. Just have to deal with waivers and lawyers, but we'll do it.